After watching Brad Holmes' press conference today, it might be time to move on. If this offseason, particularly free agency, goes as bad as last year, doesn't even have to be as bad as last year, we're going to be going over his press conference today. I was thinking about doing it on the weekend, but we're going to go ahead and do it today. I got about 30 some takeaways from the press conference. Probably won't go over all of them. I'm going to go over mainly the bad ones because most of them are bad ones, takeaways that I had. I was going to go over Dan Campbell's too, but what's the point? What is the point of going over Dan Campbell's end of season press conference that was a couple of days ago? What is the point? It doesn't matter what he says, I guarantee. I know it's supposedly a collaborative group unit with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell when it comes to decision making. I guarantee it's not. I guarantee Brad Holmes, of course, general manager, has the final say, but I guarantee he has more than just the final say. I guarantee it. Got about 30-some takeaways we going over. Obviously, there's some good things to take away from this press conference, but particularly, this is probably the most, I don't even know what the word is, depressed that I've been watching a press conference under the Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes era. Not even just Brad Holmes press conferences. Out of the Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes era, out of all coaches, all players, Marcus Davenport's close, but I think his today was the most depressing I've watched in a long, long time. Brad Holmes, to me, looks like he realizes that this year has to be the year. Obviously last year, in my opinion, was the best chance he had at getting us to a Super Bowl and addressing the needs that were on the team heading into free agency in the draft last year that he refused to address. I think this is his last opportunity to really get to a Super Bowl anytime soon. Is this year, in my opinion. I think there's a really good shot that the window will be closed next year. You're losing a lot of talented pieces, and even if you are able to re-sign guys like Brian Branch, Sam Laporta, Jack Campbell, and Jahmyr Gibbs, you're not going to have any money left. It's a miracle that we have money left right now after paying nearly $1 billion to all your players with extensions. Let's start off with the takeaways. We'll just go off of the first takeaway I wrote down just to get it out the way. I think it's the only pass rush takeaway I have from the day, and that is that Brad Holmes still does not care about the pass rush, and he will not address it this offseason. You know, I really thought, after the season ended, I'm like, this is going to be the most motivated I have been to make off-season content as my time covering the Detroit Lions on here. I don't know anymore, man. I really don't know. After watching that press conference, how he thought about the pass rush, I don't know. I really thought this was going to be the offseason. That Brad Holmes looked at himself in the mirror and was like, this might be our last shot. I got to make this football team better. I got to go be aggressive. Make that Super Bowl push and go get that player who could potentially get us over the top, or get multiple players who are very good at their position to help get us over the top. No. Nope. He essentially said that we were going to take the same approach as we did last year when it comes to the pass rush and previous years, which that means we're going to get edge rushers off the waiver wire after the preseason to add to our football team and sign or re-sign injured players. After hearing his press conference today, he mentioned two names on the defensive ends who are like, we're going to have to get somebody opposite Hutchinson, and I guarantee that guy might be Tyrus Wheat. I really do believe that. But he mentioned Muhammad and Davenport. And the fact that he even decided to mention Davenport, acting like that is a big, significant name, is wild to me. So at that point, I think there's a chance he comes back. And there was also something that really ticked me off when Brad Holmes was talking about the pass rush for that short period of time. And that was I don't know how many teams had an 11-sack guy in Muhammad and a 14.5-sack guy in Aiden Hutchinson. I don't know how many teams had that. Man, come on. Are we really doing this? Are we really doing this? Watch your general manager of this football team. I know how much, and he said this multiple times, and I do know how much work goes into the offseason, and pay attention to all these free agents. Pay attention to your own guys and watching film and all of this. But are we serious? There's just no way that you're saying, oh, we got an 11-sack guy and we had a 14.5-sack guy, and being complacent with the pass rush. You understand we were 30th out of 32 teams in the NFL in time getting to the quarterback this season? You realize, besides Muhammad and Hutchinson, of course, there is not another defensive end on our football team who could get pressure maybe 5% of the time. Davenport will go down as, in my opinion, no question, the worst re-signing as well on Brad Holmes' tenure with the Lions. There's no question. The guy doesn't fit us, in my opinion, from a locker room aspect. He's a very, I don't know what the word to use is, interesting individual. And as a football player, he had that great season back in 2019, 2018, whatever it was, when he had 9 sacks in 12 games, I believe is what it was, or 14 games. You take away that year, he's not even came close to living up to the first round pick that he was. That's it. That was the first takeaway. Now, second takeaway, obviously, this one, I just wrote this down as a takeaway. He believes the season was a failure. If he did not believe the season is a failure, then there would have to be questions coming immediately if we need to move off of him. I mean, like, thank God he believes that this season was a failure. And he believes, of course, that we can do better and we will be better. And he's basically said that Super Bowl is their only goal. So that was a good thing that Super Bowl was their only goal. But at the same time, if you don't think Super Bowl is their only goal, then why are you on this coaching staff? In this front office? So that is a good thing he said that, and that is probably a good thing that he said that when it comes to keeping his job for a longer period of time. And this was another big takeaway I got, and it's the Lions will continue to only go after grit players and the type of mentality players that they've been going after for the past couple of years, since Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell took over. And at this rate, man, like, I understand you don't want to go off of what you're doing. I understand that. You don't want to go away from what's been working for the most part. You don't want to do that. You don't want to change the football team, change the mentality of the football team. I understand that. But at some point, you have to make a move to get us over the hump. You have to. And from what he said that, and how he said that in the press conference, very well made me seem like he's going to continue going after these depth free agents, which is not awful. He did a good job of doing that in the last offseason, particularly with Rockison, Maddox, and Roy Lopez is the top three that point out the most. But there was not one good signing he had last year, or I should say bigger signing. Those were all good signings. But he did not have one big signing last year that was not to make this team better. DJ Reed replaced Carlton Davis. I do not count that one. Just at some point, do we really have to keep doing this group players? I'm not saying you got to get away from it, but I'm saying at some point, do you really just go out of the way to get a player who's not grit mentality that can get you potentially over the hump? I think you got to consider it. I'm not saying go get a guy who has criminal history or something like that, who's done something awful. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying guys who potentially could bring a little spice to the locker room, just something to get us over the hump and make this football team better. Because our football team has not gotten better since the beginning of the 2024 season, real talk. So, and this is something that I find quite interesting and hilarious, if you will. He doesn't understand what aggressive means. Brad Holmes does not understand what aggressive means. I think two different reporters asked a question about should you be aggressive this year. What does aggressive mean to you, or two similar questions when it comes to aggressiveness. And it was on the second aggressive question that it was like, what do you mean by aggression? Brad, do you not know what aggressive means? I don't understand how your general manager, are you saying, of course, the reporter is, when he's talking about aggressive, he is talking about go make that move. Go make that move that might take some draft capital in a trade or might take a lot of your money when it comes to free agency. That is what that reporter is referring to. What are you thinking he is referring to when regressive? Because Brad Holmes was shook when he asked that question. He had no idea what he meant. So I just wrote that down because that was surprising to me. There were some other questions, too, that he acted like he didn't know what they meant. I just found that interesting. I mean, so that's why I wrote down as a takeaway. It didn't really matter, but I just thought that was quite interesting. Another one is he doesn't believe more activity is the answer in the offseason, so transactional. He called it something transactional moves or something similar like that. More transactional moves. He doesn't think that's the answer. I'm not saying that's the answer either. But at the same time, like I've been saying this whole video and I've been saying now for months, at some point, like you do got to go get some good players. Another one that says probably won't be a headline move made, and that was really the one that set me off. That the Lions will not most likely make a headline move, but there could be a splash. Now Brad Holmes has been saying that for the past couple years, so I mean just throw that out the window. A splash is a rock you sin. I mean, that's what that is. But the fact that he says essentially that there will be no headline once again this year when it comes to free agency, at least. I mean, like, are we serious? Are we serious? I just don't understand Brad Holmes, and when it comes to this grit mentality and talent, players of talent, you don't even have to have much talent. If you have grit mentality, you will be a Detroit Lion. You will be on this football team. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just unbelievable to me. And when it comes to money, when it comes to not making a headline, brother, this could be your final year. Like, I just don't understand why you think this team is good enough. He doesn't really think that, but he sure acts like it in his press conferences, that he really does think this team is good enough and thinks that a headline won't make this team much better. Tried to dodge multiple questions. Already went over that one. Frank, he said this one's definitely a takeaway. Frank Ragnow is done. They have parted. They have gone separate ways. Jared Goff kind of mentioned that in the press conference a couple days ago. So Frank Ragnow's time with the Lions is pretty much confirmed to be over now, if there was any chance of him coming back. So I did want to write down that one. And then the biggest takeaway I got from this when it comes to needs for the football team this upcoming offseason is that the O-line is the biggest need for Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. Biggest priority. And he mentions multiple positions, tackle and center specifically. And it sure seems like to me that the Lions are going to be getting a new center this offseason. He did mention Ratledge possibly, but it sure sounded to me more like they're going to be going after a center, or whether that's free agency trade or the draft. Personally, I'm not drafting a rookie center. I'm either signing a guy or trading for a center if I'm going out of my way to get a center. Personally, I think we should just move Ratledge to center and sign a veteran guy in free agency who's had starting experience, who's played at a decent level throughout his career, that doesn't have to start necessarily, but who, if Ratledge struggles, can come in and be the starter. I don't think we should go draft a guy high in the draft to start for us, and I don't necessarily think we should go get a guy like Tyler Lindenbaum because that could affect other contracts down the road. And I don't know if that's the smartest move. I'd prefer just to go move Ratledge to center and go sign a veteran guard free agency, where that's bringing back a guy like Kevin Zeitler, signing a guy like Joel Bitonio, signing a guy like Wyatt Teller, something like that, signing a guy like Isaac Sayamadu, something like that. It's going to be cheaper. Brad Holmes loves being cheap, obviously, when it comes to free agency that's not his own players. So that's right up his alley. Tyler Linderbaum, by the way, won't happen. There's no way he will even hit the market, in my opinion. But if he somehow does, that's not even going to... Brad Holmes ain't even going to entertain that. I'm just telling you that right now. He did say multiple times that they tried to make a move for an offensive lineman this past season, in the offseason and in season. Did mention that multiple times, and he did say the O-line need is urgent, and they need to address it quickly, so I would assume that there will be some bigger names brought in on the offensive line this season. I do think the Lions will be signing at least one big-time veteran free agent in the offensive line market, whether that is one of the three guys like I mentioned or one of the four, and Isaac Sayamalu, Wyatt Teller, Joe Bitonio, or Kevin Zeitler or anybody else, but those are probably the top four veteran guards on the market that are still playing at elite level. But that's very interesting to me. Sounds like they have lost hope, and Manu was another big one I took away. He basically said he's fighting for a job at this point. He has to beat somebody out, which sounded to me like he's fighting for a roster spot next season. Now, that one I think is probably the right answer, because I'm glad he didn't come out and said, look, this guy has a chance to start for us next year. Manu was not good, to say the least. Was kind of abysmal in his one start this past season against the Bengals, and he just has not developed at the rate I don't think the Lions have wanted him to, and I just don't think there's much developmental left there that's going to say this guy has a lot of potential with us. I just think that was a bad draft pick, and Brad Holmes needs to move on. But I thought that was a pretty big takeaway as well. Doesn't believe that they have headed into the offseason with the hole and not addressed it. Excuse me. That one was the biggest one that I took away from this. You mean to tell me that specifically last season, you headed into last offseason thinking there was not a big significant need that you did not address on the whole entire roster in last offseason? You mean to tell me you think defensive end was not a need heading into the offseason? Or you think you addressed it by re-signing Marcus Davenport and Al-Quadin Muhammad? Are we serious? And you mean to tell me there was no other need besides that on the roster that you could have improved? Or do you think you already improved it? By the way, they did not approve it. He might think that, but they really did not. The only position that really got better for the Detroit Lions this year was the linebacker room. That was really it. You can maybe say the secondary at full strength, but they didn't play full strength. Linebacker room played full strength pretty much all year. That was the only position on the team, in my opinion, that really got better this past offseason. Lions will look outside organization for an OC, so that's good. They'll be making another video coming out probably tomorrow morning when you're seeing this, that we have interviewed Mike McDaniel for the offense coordinator job. Got fired from Miami today. That one's very interesting to me. He's a very weird, quirky, funny guy. I don't know. He's not really funny. He's more like a dad joke type guy, but I don't know how I'd feel about that one. He's a good play caller, but I just don't know if he really fit us like that personally. Very interesting man. And priorities in an OC was leadership, detail-oriented, and command of room. So that is kind of a sign to me that John Morton didn't have any of those things, or at least the command of room when it comes to having the team behind him. And I think that was pretty obvious from what John Morton said a couple times in his press conferences and similar to that. So I think that's really one of the cases. And he also said multiple times that they believe they've done enough effort, the front office, when it comes to trying to make trades happen and stuff like that. I will respect that one. I will respect that answer. One of the few respected answers, one of the few answers I can respect from this press conference. I do believe that a lot of work goes into this, and I do understand how much work goes into it. So I will give him that. But at the same time, okay, if you really are doing all this work getting the trades done, how did you not get one done this past offseason? That just seems a little bit fishy to me, but that you tried this hard and you couldn't get one to go through for any position, for any player. Already went over that one. Sounds like they need a new center. Grades himself an F on the season and says this past season was not good enough. Essentially just copied Dan Campbell's end of season press conference grade. Dan Campbell said he'd give himself a freaking F. Brad Holmes essentially just copied him. But at the same time, I don't know what else he could say. F minus. That's pretty much the only thing I could say. If he gave himself higher than an F, he's lying to himself, Brad Holmes. So I guess I'll take that response. Biggest failure is not making the playoffs. Another big one I took away from this is Muhammad will not be returning. When the pass rush question was brought up, he made it for sure seem like that we're going to have to get a different guy opposite Aiden Hutchinson. Not saying that guy's going to be, a difference maker, but just a different guy opposite Hutchinson regardless, because they don't want to pay Muhammad. And it sounds like to me also that Davenport is most likely going to be gone, but there is more optimism like I talked about earlier. And he also mentioned with all the injuries happening to Kirby Joseph, he was trying to play this past season, working his hardest, getting better every week, and then he had that setback that really hurt him for the rest of the season. He says they will definitely look at safety and everything in the offseason, but safety is very interesting to me. He said he did mention Thomas Harper, and he liked the development of Thomas Harper and Daniel Thomas and Maddox and Eric Howard at the time when he was on the roster, stepping in and doing some things for us, but it sounded like to me they might go after safety this offseason. Run defense will be addressed, it sounds like to me, and it's the biggest need on the defensive line for the Lions in their eyes. He mentioned the run defense was not up to par, so it was not up to par this past season. But that's very interesting to me, because I think that pretty much confirms Reeder won't be back if there was any question, and I think that means there's also a chance that Roy won't be back, Lopez. So it'll be interesting, and you know what I think that means as well? I think that means Levi comes back. I think Levi comes back. I really do. Really, really do. Believe Super Bowl is not far off. I don't believe that either, but if he does nothing this offseason, I think it is. Laporta, Gibbs are priorities to them when it comes to extensions, but there's no timeline. So that does sound like to me that Laporta will get extended. Now the question is, will they have to not extend one of the two of Jet Campbell or Brian Branch? Because it's going to be tough to extend, obviously, Laporta and Gibbs, but both of those guys as well. So they'll be very careful if they're able to work something out with that. And they will not get complacent when it comes to gritty players. And it's like, man, I don't even know what that gritty players aspect anymore. And I got two more here. Developmental players still will be targeted and drafted. I don't understand that one either when you're in a Super Bowl year. Possibly your last Super Bowl year before that window starts to close, in my opinion. I understand every year is a new year, but it's going to be really tough, I think, starting next year to even have a shot. And he sounds to me like they tried to get an edge in the draft this past year, obviously higher than the 6th round. So those are my takeaways. I know it's probably a boring video. I'm sorry about that. If you stick till the end, I appreciate you, but as boring as this video probably was to watch, that's how bored I was watching Brad Holmes' press conference and how depressed I was. I'm going to say something right now. If Brad Holmes does nothing in the offseason, I think there might have to be some consideration going on there if it's time to move on from him. Especially after the draft, if he has a draft like he had last year. But specifically after free agency. Because to me, what I got from it is that he's going to do pretty much the same exact thing in free agency this upcoming year, but maybe get a couple more bigger name players like a Joel Bitonio or something like that. But nobody that's at a different position. It'll be an offensive line, in my opinion, if it is a player. Main takeaways from his press conference is that he's the same Brad Holmes that he was last year when it comes to kind of got an ego to him. I respect Brad Holmes, don't get me wrong. Probably the greatest general manager we've had. Obviously, he's turned this team around, but at the same time, Super Bowl is the only goal, so it's like how much respect and how much praise can you really give him? I mean, truly, when now you're really starting to regress as an organization and as a team. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm very not pleased right now with the team, very not pleased with that press conference, and very not pleased with his answers. So, one probably go Lions. Another takeaway, I'll be going over this in different videos. It sounds like pretty much David Montgomery is gone as well. And it was a horrible response from Brad Holmes to a question asked. To me, it pretty much confirmed that David Montgomery will no longer be with the Lions next year. So, because if I talked about that early in the video, yeah, I'd be irate for the rest of the video. So we're going to wrap it up here. One Pride, go Lions. Sorry about the boring video. If you made it here, I appreciate you. Leave something in the comments if you stayed till the end. And leave your thoughts about the press conference. Unbelievable.